Well, Mike Jones is not going to be here tonight.
Oh, is that right?
Yeah, he had something come up, so
Okay.
you have quorum of 3. I haven't heard anything from Therese. Are you on by chance, Therese?
I mean, it's probably time to get started, Dave.
Yeah, I'm going to. I just was trying to make one last pass.
Sure, I understand.
Regular meeting of Windsor Heights City Council come to order. Roll call.
Susan Skerries.
Here.
Joseph Jones.
Here.
Lafredo.
Here,
And Therese Harms. So I have Therese and Mike Jones absent.
Okay. Folks, please join me in our Pledge of Allegiance. Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you. Move to approve the agenda.
so moved.
Second.
Roll call.
Sue Skerries.
Yes.
Joseph Jones.
Yes.
And Lafredo.
Yes,
Next item on the agenda is public hearing on ordinance 2005. Add a section 30.11 unbiased policing policy to our code of ordinances. Motion to open the public hearing.
So
so
moved.
moved.
I will second.
Roll call.
Sue Skerries.
Yes.
Joseph Jones.
Yes.
Mike Lafredo.
Yes,
Public hearing is now open. We did not have any written comments that I'm aware of or any verbal comments. Is there any from the public? Hearing none, motion to close. Public hearing,
So moved.
second.
roll call.
Sue Skerries.
Yes.
Joseph Jones.
Yes.
And Mike Lafredo.
Yes,
Next item on the agenda is consideration of the first reading of ordinance 2005, which adds that chapter 30.11 to the Windsor Heights Code of Ordinances. Motion to approve.
So moved.
I will second that.
Any discussion? Roll call.
Skerries.
Yes.
Joseph Jones.
Yes.
And Mike Lafredo.
yes,
Next item is public forum, which time set aside for comments from the public on any topics not addressed on this agenda. No action will be taken. Please state your name, address for the record, and no more than 5 minutes, please. Any takers? Okay. Next item is consent agenda. Motion to approve.
I'm motion to approve the consent agenda, pulling out the key consulting payment for discussion.
which one, Susan? I didn't hear
Item B.
it. Okay. Well, I know item B, but,
Key consulting, the $2,200 basically.
okay.
You want to, since we've got, if we had a motion to approve, you want to just discuss that? I mean, we
Sure.
can go to discussion.
That's fine.
Okay. I take it then you have a motion to approve? Or one of the others?
We'll move, Dave, if we don't.
Okay.
So I have a
Okay,
motion by Susan. I have a motion by Susan, second by Lafredo.
okay.
To
Susan, you
approve the
have
consent agenda.
comments?
Yes, I'm just questioning the key consulting, the $2,230, just because I was not at all impressed with Key's work or their presentation about the wage compensation study number 1 or 2. I realize that this is about study number 2, but it's kind of all thrown together just because we went through and did the presentation at the same time. There were multiple errors on Key Consulting's part. I could read through them. There's multiple ones. I then attempted to make it through the follow-up that Key provided to our June 8th meeting, and I could not make sense of what they provided to us. It was confusing, and honestly, after spending over 8 hours fact-checking their studies the first round, I didn't want to spend any more of my time doing the job for them. Just in the follow-up paper, there are issues that I have, such as the first page of the compensation study number 1. It lists that the summary of the table's areas that were updated in the report start on page 13. It's actually page 12. Study number 2, the page numbers are off again. So 3 sets of page numbers are not correct on this page 2 of their follow-up. They changed how their finance director, how they provided that information. Now they're just using 2 cities in the state of Missouri and 2 outside sources to find the midpoint and proposed range for the finance director. The city clerk only has 2 Iowa cities used and 4 out-of-state cities used to create that midpoint. The public safety director has different cities used also than before, at least I think at this latest follow-up, but it was way more confusing than the first one, which was confusing. In study number 2, using the city of Wayzata, they updated the pay for the geographical differential with the exception of the police admin support clerk. In every other city where they applied geographical differential, the numbers for every position in that city reflected that change, other than the police admin support clerk in the city of Wayzata. I'm sure if I continued on and read through this study, I would come up with more questions and concerns. Attention to detail is an important part of a compensation study. If they can't update the pages where information is listed for me to go view, then how can I trust other information that they have provided? I think there needs to be a discussion with Key on the payment they should receive, since I question how much of their study the city can actually use. The city did not get what it paid for, and paying for this study the way it's presented is doing a disservice to the residents.
Mark, any comments?
Well, I'm not going to dispute any of Susan's points. I have not looked at the specific issues she's referring to. I know she isn't happy with their work. In my opinion, they did a good job. Now, you can find errors probably in their work, but are the results credible? I believe that they are. Maybe not everybody agrees with that. They did the work. So I believe they should be paid. If somebody wants to have further conversation with them about that, I'm fine with that.
My comment would be that I understand what Susan's saying, and I support that, those comments, because we really don't even know who filled out the emails that were sent out. I just don't think it's probably very valid, the whole study, and that's my feeling. But it's done, and so I don't know what can be done after the study is finished.
But is the study finished? I mean, do we even have, I have tried to read through this, and either I am not comprehending what they have said, or it's just confusing because I'm looking at the follow-up. I'm going back and forth. It's disarray for me.
So here is my suggestion. Rather than just deny payment, Susan, you indicated did you indicate that you wanted to talk with them about this? Did I hear that correctly?
Well, I don't know if I would talk to them about this. I mean, I don't really know how to go about this, but I don't feel that we should pay for what we have received because we're really not, I don't know how much we can even use of it. I don't think that the work that we have is worth $2,200 considering I don't think any of us feel confident in the information that they have given to us with the numerous errors that have been found, and not just like one or two small ones. We're talking, there was one that was $100,000 difference.
Susan,
So
what are you suggesting happen now?
Well, I'm not exactly sure what Key Consulting is willing to do. I mean, I don't know. I don't really have a great suggestion on what to do other than this. There needs to be something either presented to us differently, or we need to not be paying the full amount or something. But this study was just not up to par for me.
Well, I said my piece. I'm happy to try to set up a meeting with Key and whoever wants to be on that call to get the questions addressed. I'm certainly happy to do that.
Let me throw something out. If we want to redo can we approve the payment of claims without that item? Or should we go ahead and pay the claims and then have a discussion as to what can be done to correct or improve it? I would suggest the latter.
I think that, we did ask for a service. They provided it. We may not believe that they provided it well. So I do believe they should be paid, but I also agree that Susan needs to have her and other people's questions answered about this. So I'd be okay with us approving what's there with the exception of the Key Consulting until we have that conversation and follow up with payment to them or not, or whatever is the result of that at the next meeting.
Okay, Susan, you made the original motion, or at least we credited you with it. You want to redo that and say you approve the consent agenda without the items for Keck on the claims, pending further discussion?
Well, I said to pull out Key Consulting payment I did the motion to pull the Key Consulting payment out for discussion. So I will make the motion, amend the motion to pull out Key Consulting, but approve the rest of the payments.
Okay. If the motion has been amended, do we have a second?
Well, Mike
Second.
originally seconded, so
Okay. Roll call.
Skirries,
Yes.
Joseph Jones,
yes.
and Mike LaFredo.
Yes. Hey, Dave, can I make a comment next on item A? No, not the minutes, the payments too. Can I just add something to that, item B?
Go ahead.
I just have a comment. When I went through them on Saturday, I just got to share this because I'm really pleased with the way Rochelle or whoever, Travis, has laid that out. The transparency has increased a great amount, and the specificity has been increased of where the money is going. And so I left Rochelle a little bit of a note there, but yeah, I think she should be commended for getting things where they are right now. So that's it.
Thank you, Mike. We always like to hear of the good work.
I do, yeah, I like to be able to give them too.
Next item on the agenda is consideration of a resolution 2020-88. And this would be to set the public hearing at 6 p.m. 7/20 this year relating to the amendment to remove a subsection related to unimproved services and removing the private property language from subsection 22. Motion to approve.
So moved.
Second.
Any discussion?
Mark, can you remind us really quickly, update us on this again?
This is just to clarify the language further regarding parking on lawns or not. And I defer to Chief McCluskey. He's kind of been the driver on these issues more so than me. So Chief, if you want to comment further, I think that would be fine. Otherwise, it's mainly about clarifying the language of where people are and aren't supposed to park.
Yeah, it's cleaning up some code. Of course, just because we have something in our code doesn't necessarily mean that it's either A, the best way to put it, or B, legal to enforce. And we had the unimproved surfaces on private property in Chapter 60, which addresses traffic violations for which officers can issue a municipal citation. And we cannot do that on private property. We cannot enforce parking on private property outside of handicap zones, disabled zones, and fire zones. And so the first public hearing under 6A is to remove that language from Chapter 60 to eliminate that confusion. And then subsection B under number 6 is the counterpart to this, which is further defining, based on council's previous discussion, what unimproved services are, and allowing for bricks, concrete pavers, those hard surfaces, but not allowing for gravel, dirt, regrind, or the more impervious surfaces. But it's basically to eliminate some confusion and clean up what's there to make it fit right in the code.
Okay, thank you.
Can I just comment on that too, please?
Yes.
On 63rd Street, kind of behind Mrs. Series' home, there's 3 vehicles parked on the lawn when I go by it. Now, I don't know where this falls in which ordinance or doesn't fall, but it is kind of an improper use of a front lawn.
Yeah, that falls under 174 as well, Mike.
Okay.
It's a code violation.
Well, they were there and very unattractive, like it was a parking lot in the front yard.
Any further discussion on item A?
I just want to thank Chad for taking the time to talk with me and kind of go over a few things with me and work with me on this. And I know he spent a lot of time on this resolution and trying to figure out the connection between various different codes and violations, and it always seems to snowball. So I appreciate his help in this matter.
Thank you,
I
Susan.
appreciate it.
We have a motion and a second. Roll call.
Series,
Yes.
Joseph Jones,
Yes.
and Mike LaFredo.
Yes.
Partner to what we just did here is consideration of resolution 2020-89, which is again to set the public hearing for 6 p.m. on 7/20 to further define the surfaces allowed for parking on private property. So since we've already had basically a discussion, let's have a motion and a second. And if council wants to say anything or discuss anything further, we can.
So moved.
Second.
Any further discussion? Roll call.
Series,
Yes.
Joseph Jones,
Yes.
and LaFredo.
Here. Yes.
Next item is new business. Consideration of resolution 2020-90, resolution to receive and file the 73rd Street Corridor Traffic Study.
So moved.
Second?
Second? Did
We haven't
anybody
got to discussion yet.
Yeah, I
Was it
moved.
second?
I'll second it then.
Thank you.
Okay. Justin, you're on the hot seat.
All right. I will have Rob, who did the study, give a short or give a kind of a presentation, kind of just an overview of the report. Again, this report was to just do a traffic study from all the way from Center Street to Hickman on 73rd Street. We have design contract to do from University to Hickman. So some of this applies now and some of it is kind of a future thing, but we really have to study the whole thing at once. So that's kind of what we did. Some of these recommendations we, are forced. These are before we have any information available to us as far as like survey, topographic survey. So some of these recommendations are on here, may or may not apply. Just it's for us to determine how we design it. So if we can fit some of these recommendations in from the traffic study in, great. Like I said, we don't have all the information, so we don't know exactly how much it's gonna work. It's just kind of what the traffic study told us to do. So I will let Rob kind of run through some of these. It's kind of a short one, just kind of giving the highlights of what we typically present to councils with our reports. So Rob, I will let you go ahead.
Great. Good evening, and thanks for having me to talk about the traffic study. I guess the quick overview here. With a traffic study, we look at existing conditions to see what the road is, what is all out there for traffic control, speed limits, that type of thing. We review crash analysis, proposed improvements, and those are proposed developments, as well as potential changes to the roadway system. We model it through software that takes into account drivers and how they react to the number of lanes, the traffic control, the speed limits, all of those types of things. And then I have recommendations based on the information. So I'll run through it as quick as I can here. So we will start with the existing conditions. The existing roadway is it's considered federal functional classification of minor arterial. Now the functional classification is just basically the type of road. There are local roads, which are your residential streets. Then it shifts to collectors, which allow traffic from those residential streets to get to more major roadways. Arterials are your main traffic flow, your main traffic movement. So a minor arterial is kind of a smaller one of those. And then major arterials and interstate system. By being in a minor arterial, it also allows this to get funding for federal dollars if a project were to be done and applied for. This area has two distinct areas, with commercial at the south end and residential toward the north. There's also the school up in that residential area. Intersection control is signals at the major intersections of Center Street or I-235 eastbound ramp, the 235 westbound ramp, Buffalo Road, and University Avenue. The rest of the streets are side street stop control. That mainly just means 73rd Street is control or is free flow, and then everybody else has to stop. The existing pedestrian facilities, there's a trail from Walnut Creek on the east side up to University Avenue, where it traverses that intersection on the east side and then the north side of the intersection, and then continues along the west side approximately 850 feet north of University Avenue. There's sidewalk on the opposite side of the trail and then north of where the trail turns. There's a little bit of sidewalk south on the west side of Buffalo Road, but there's no connection to the south right now. I know that there was a previous study done to kind of look at options for the pedestrian connection to the south. And I believe that it was deemed it was not feasible at the time. With a roadway reconstruction, it might be, and that's going to be one of our recommendations later. So next we'll move on to crash analysis. This is really, we're looking at what are the crashes, and then what are the severity of the crashes? Do we have a high crash location? And do we have a severe crash location too? We reviewed 5 years of, we always look at the complete data. So this was up through December of 2019. We don't include 2020 here. And there were 233 reported crashes. That's, as you'll see later, it's on the low end or below average overall. But we do have a couple of issue locations with 73rd Street at the eastbound ramp or Center Street, and then also Buffalo Road. There aren't any fatal crashes. There were 2 major injury crashes, 18 minor injury crashes. You've probably read the rest already, and that information is detailed more in the report as well. We can kind of go through that if you have questions about it later too. So these 2 tables just show you what the average is for the type of intersection or the type of segment, and then what our crash rate actually is. So that highlights the 73rd Street at the 235 eastbound ramp, and then Buffalo Road as being above the statewide average. The 73rd or the eastbound ramp is really the kind of the one that sticks out the most because it's way above the average. Next,
Can I interject something?
Yep.
Statewide average doesn't mean too much to me. I mean, we got a lot of rural areas and
Right.
towns, so.
So if I go back there, you'll notice that the statewide average for the types of intersections or the average changes based on the intersections in the list there. So we have 0.8 and 0.9 in the different intersections. Those take into account the types of intersections and and urban and rural and what types of roads are feeding into the intersection. So more major roads like the interstate with 73rd Street, that's going to be a higher probability of crashes. So that's why the average is higher. The others with them being more local roads with 73rd, that's why that one's a little bit lower. Okay.
Yeah, I understand the crash rate in our city.
Yep.
That's in the left-hand column, but the statewide average to me doesn't mean much. That's just my thinking.
Okay. Well, and we can go into that a little bit more. Actually.
No, you don't need to go into it more for my benefit anyway.
Okay. I feel like I'm missing a slide here right now. Oh, no, I have some more information later that actually discusses, so the 73rd Street at 235 with that ramp, basically what we did, we saw what the crashes were. We looked at those rates. We noticed that they're higher, so we dug into them a little bit more, and we did notice a trend at the 235 eastbound ramp or the southern ramp. So that's something that we look into when we see those crash rates being higher. Okay. Next, we're looking at the proposed improvements. Give me a second here. I need to move this. There we go. The proposed improvements, we have when we do a traffic study, we look at the current year, so 2020, and then we also look at a future year. Normally we look at 20 years out, and the reason for that is we want the traffic study to give recommendations of what the roadway system should be for something that would be constructed now, so it still functions well in 20 years. So our first item that we look at is potential growth on the system. The growth there, we looked at past data for the historical ADTs that the DOT has. We found either a negative growth or no growth, but we want to make sure that if something happens where a big, we have Walmart and Sam's Club that say Target builds, or the old Kmart site is at the very north end was to redevelop. Those things are taken into account. And those are the ones that we don't know necessarily might happen. So we use or in this case, we put a 0.5% growth in there. That really only adds 10% to the traffic volumes, but it makes sure that the roadway will still work in the future as well. The other things we looked at are the potential development that we have an idea about or we've heard something about. In this case, there was a newspaper article or a news article about the area in front of Sam's Club and Walmart that has Burger King and Bebop's and parking lots and that area as a potential redevelopment. So those we want to bring in because we know that they're more likely to happen. And we'll put those in some of our scenarios. In this case, we went with the 20-year scenario. And then it was discussed about potential for a 3-lane segment, which is the 1 lane in each direction and a 2-way left turn lane north of University. So those items were all reviewed, and that the 3-lane portion is what we're considering our build. And we'll work through the rest of these as we go into. I guess that was a good segue into the modeling portion here. So
Can I
then we
ask you something again about the design before we get into law enforcement? I'm assuming we paid for the study already. But my question is, if the council doesn't approve the project on 73rd until like 5 or 6 years from now, how valid will that study be?
So that's why we look at the 20 years out, so that if there is some change or there is some delay in a project happening, that hopefully it takes that into account as well. So
there's no need to do an additional study then?
I wouldn't think unless you get to, 5 years is probably okay, but if you get 10 years out, then I would look at potentially redoing it again.
Okay, yeah, my question was 5 or so years, so thank you.
Yep. So now we have our existing conditions all pulled together. We have our proposed conditions. We put them into some computer modeling, and we use that to determine delay, capacity of the roadways and intersections, and then queuing of traffic at intersections. One of the delay pieces that you'll hear is level of service. It's graded kind of like school grades, an A through an F. There is an E in there as well. But I will say that kind of like school grades where A through C is passing, in this case, A through D is passing or considered normal. So it functions. You'll start to see a little bit of slowdown as you get into D. E is where you have congestion that people would start to find different routes or you would have longer delay time sitting at intersections or on a segment. And then F is a system breakdown, meaning that it's backing, or there's enough delay or there's enough queuing that it's backing to maybe the next intersection, or it's just blocking people from getting in and out of driveways and those types of things. This table here is included in the report, but I wanted to run through it kind of real quick because it gives most of the information as far as the delay. You'll see the 9 intersections we studied on the left side of the table. And then across the top, there are different scenarios. We start with the existing condition and then look at mitigation for any issues that we have. And then we kind of work our way across to next one's the build year, or the current year build, which is changing the north portion to the 3-lane. And then again, mitigation, what would solve any of the issues there. And then we look at that 20-year out doing the same thing with basically it's just growth on the system, the proposed developments for the no build. And then the future year build is the change with that 3-lane again. What you'll notice is these are the intersections all function as an acceptable level of service. We have some letter D's or higher delays showing up in there. We have included in the report some tables that really break down each intersection by movement as well. And when you go in, if you were to look at those tables, you will see that certain movements will be level of service A, but at the same, and at some of those intersections that have the intersection level of service D, but then you have some movements or level of service F. What we noticed was that it was a similar movement on a lot of them that had that level of service F. So we looked at mitigating that movement, mitigating for that movement, and then that helps us solve the issue here. And that mitigation is actually, it should hopefully help with the crash issue as well. It's at the I-235 eastbound ramp, so it's Center Street, and we looked at, I think maybe I had it here. Oh, yep. So we added that northbound left turn lane, which right now it's 2 northbound lanes that kind of curve through the intersection. And then southbound, there is 2 through lanes, but also a left turn lane. So we're trying to match up the left turn lanes. We also look at if this is being reconstructed, making sure that the jointing of the pavement out there is set up so that a lane would continue through the intersection. Mainly, I guess if you drive it right now, what you get is you're kind of driving northbound in either of the lanes, and you have to shift as you're going through across one of the joints. So it doesn't feel like you're going where you're supposed to be going. Or if you're following the joint through, you're in the left lane, you're gonna wind up in that southbound left turn lane and having a head-on collision potentially. So that's one thing we would look at is helping that. It also helps the traffic flow because there's a significant amount of traffic making that northbound left turn, that having a dedicated turn lane would take that traffic out of the through lane, and then we can set the signal timing so that it works better for that intersection. What we found with the proposed modeling is that same mitigation worked well throughout. The development that we talked about in front of Sam's and Walmart didn't make any change or require any roadway changes or traffic control changes as well. And then the 3-lane north of University really made minimal improvements. If I back up a slide here to the previous, you'll notice that the bottom intersections 6, 7, 8, and 9, they're all level of service A with very little delay currently, or for any of the models. So it doesn't make a whole lot of difference adding that two-way left turn lane to the north end. So our recommendations, as I mentioned earlier, that northbound left turn lane at the Center Street 235 intersection, that will help both safety and queuing and delay issues. And it makes some pretty significant improvements in delay for travel time through the corridor as well. And then looking past that, north of University, keeping it as 2-lane works well. As Justin mentioned, this is the traffic study, so I'm telling you what works well. So if as the city you deem that you want a 3-lane, or if you want turn lanes in certain spots, we can help you decide what's the best option. I'm just telling you what the results are of the study. We also noticed that the sidewalks throughout are anywhere from 3.5 feet to 4.5 feet. ADA requirements are for 4 feet as a minimum, with turning spaces at spots every 150 feet, or 5 feet. We've gone to designing most things at 5 feet because those turning spaces are kind of annoying to design in, and they require people that are using it to make adjustments. And I think everybody's getting used to more 5-foot sidewalks. Talking with Dalton, the trail crossing at University has been a concern for trail users. So as things are going forward, there's the potential to look at trail crossings or how the trail is routed so that it connects and maybe doesn't cross. But if it does stay at University, I think the legs that it's, or the sides of the intersection it's crossing, the north side and the east side, there are the appropriate ones, because there's more traffic on the west leg and the south leg. So the people crossing don't have to have as many conflicting vehicles. And then review a pedestrian connection to the south. There's, like I said, there's no connection. If the roadway is reconstructed, maybe there's some adjustments that can be made that allow for some space to do that. I think that's something that we see enough pedestrians walking that it would definitely help out there. So are there any questions that haven't been addressed?
Well, Mr. Mayor, I just have one. Go ahead.
I was going to say thank you, Rob. I'm sure there will be. Mark, did you have anything you want to say?
Yeah, just one thing. Why is there an echo there? No. I think it's worth investigating what it would take to put a turn lane in at the school. Now, the study indicates that the traffic volumes aren't sufficient to meet the warrants, but that doesn't mean that you can't put a turn lane in there. I'm not saying to do it. I'm just saying I think it'd be worth finding out what it would cost, and then the council members can decide if it's worth the cost. I'm sure people would appreciate having that turn lane there during school, because I'm sure it's a hassle to get through there without that turn lane. So it has limited use, granted, but the times that it could be used, I think it would be appreciated if the cost was not out of line.
I agree with that, Mark, and perhaps the West Des Moines schools could be a partner in providing for that.
Yeah, that's a possibility.
Yeah, that's what I would say.
This is all for future discussions, but at this point in time, what we've got on the table is just to receive it and file it. I'm sure the questions can go on. Rob and Justin will always be available that as you go through this and you have questions or concerns, we can do that. But we've got a motion and a second.
Hey,
Unless there's
Mr.
any more
Mayor,
specific questions.
Mr. Mayor, if I may.
Yeah.
So what I've requested Bolton and Mink to do is to give their presentation tonight. And then they need to be able to have clear direction to move forward with the design of the 73rd Street project between University and Hickman. And so, looks like Mike just joined us here. So what I'm asking of the council is if the results of this study are acceptable, to receive and file it. And then if there is something that you would like to see that's not addressed in the study for that section of roadway that's going to be reconstructed in the next, let's say, 5 years, let me know and I'll put together a separate resolution and bring it to you guys at the July 20th meeting so that we can give them, clear direction from the council as a whole. So right now I've got explore, or should we say move forward with design with a left turn lane, northbound left turn into the school, and determine feasibility of that, or how would you guys like to proceed? Is there any?
What I would say is this needs to be tabled right now, this discussion, because we're missing 2 council members. And I think it'd be very appropriate if they had a part in this discussion. And so I don't know what they think about a turn lane. I agree with Mark, there needs to be a turn lane there. But I think there needs to be some consideration of West Des Moines buy-in to this. So I certainly wouldn't want to add any cost to anything at this point until we have the full group of 5 people.
I think that we're still free to study whether or not it's feasible or how much it would cost without having to have their buy-in to do that.
I couldn't understand you, Joseph.
I think that Dalton can still proceed and still check to see how much that would cost, or if it was feasible to do that left turn
Sure.
lane without having the other 2 people's buy-in on that.
Right, I agree with you.
Okay.
I guess I would also like to have some residents that live in that area, that drive that area in Clive to drop off their kids, to also be able to kind of give some information to us as to what they think about that situation in there. I guess I would just like to have, instead of just us as council, also to have some resident feedback as to what they've seen, and if there's something that we're not seeing because we don't drive it or we're not there at the busy times during the day. So not that we can't accept this and move forward, but I would just also like to make sure that we get some resident input on this.
Susan, I agree with that. And I've been there several times during the start of school and after school, and it is kind of a mess. And it's a little bit dangerous because people will try to turn and into the first lane to get turned to go the other way. And I've witnessed that, and frankly, it's not a good situation, but certainly the residents should have some input.
So what needs to happen to continue on with the design of 73rd Street is direction for Bolton and Mink. So if we want to have some kind of an open house for the residents, we can do that. Want to make sure that's what you guys want to do before we set that up. I sent this out. I've sent it out, I think, 3 times over the last 3 or 4 weeks, maybe 2, 3, 4 weeks, and I haven't heard much back from anybody. So I think the recommendations are sound and they're rooted in evidence and all that. So Rob, I really appreciate the hard work you did on this. And what my plan was to do a resolution at the July 20th meeting, but would you guys like to push that back until August?
I think I would feel comfortable if it was pushed back until August, just because we don't have 2 council members here to kind of, state what they think. We don't have any residents that have stated what they've thought. And, we've had a lot of paperwork shoved at us in the last few weeks to go through and look. And so this was not one of my highest priorities. I mean, I looked through it and I have questions, but I'd like to kind of look through it a little bit and figure out my east and west, since there's a lot of east, west, north, south, and that's never been a strong point on my part.
Maybe I'm wrong, but I don't see a big urgency to this. But I think what Joseph suggested is a good idea.
So right now, Bolton and Mink is it kind of at a standstill on where they can go with their design on this.
Well, yeah, I think so.
So it's not like we have to get this done immediately, but the longer we wait to do this, the longer it's going to take to get 73rd Street redesigned. And then it'll be, just pushing back the design is going to push back the construction date, I guess is what I'm trying to say. So.
Well, I have no adult, and I would have no idea. I certainly don't know what the council would feel about when this occurs to 73rd Street. I know we have it included in the CIP, but I'm not confident when it will take place. So, yeah, I'm not gonna vote to rush it through by any means.
Dalton, I think that we've had this for almost a month now, and I've read it, and I think the issue is that it seems to me the concern would be to, accept it, file, and move forward with it, is that essentially is approving the design, which I think when this report was first sent to us, you'd said that this needs to be received and filed by the council prior to continuing with the design work for the road between University and Hickman Road. I think probably if there are concerns about the approval if there are concerns from the council being, approving this, will therefore approve this, design without any further sort of feedback from it. I guess, are people having, it sounds like there are individuals that are having concerns about adding a traffic lane that was not recommended, or I'm sorry, a turning lane that was not recommended. But if we need to have all 5 council members, I think that talking about a decision about taking this traffic study, which will apparently determine the design for 73rd, I think it is very important for all 5 council members to be part of that discussion.
I agree. And I also think we don't have any start date for this project, and then we can back it up for the design people. And so, yeah, I just don't, again, see any rush job. But I agree with Joseph that there could be some legwork done now, and perhaps Dalton can do that.
One of the things that was just mentioned was, okay, when we did the stuff for Allison College, 69th, and so on, we had a meeting down at the community center.
Right.
Perhaps if this is accepted, then a tentative design can be done, and Bolton and Mink could make a presentation, reference those particular people that have input, maybe with the school or whatever, give us something to work with.
Again, let me just state what I think again, because the West Des Moines schools are involved with this. And no matter how you cut it, and they need to have a buy-in if there's something altered to the street, like a 3-lane. And so they should have some input into it and buy-in with it, in my opinion. And Susan brought up, and I agree with it too, residents need to be consulted. And in past projects, I know Bolton Mink has gone door to door and asked folks what they thought about that. So, yeah, I don't think, in my opinion, I'm not ready to vote on this.
So I guess the recommendations in the report are only recommendations that are substantiated by the data. And so, I mean, getting the public feedback is critically important to this project for sure. But the resident feedbacks aren't going to change any of the data, which are what drove all those recommendations. And so I guess what my request would be for you guys is to receive and file it with the direction to Bolton and Mink to be on standby until we've had an opportunity to solicit public input on what they would like to see on that corridor. I mean, receiving and filing it is just acknowledging that the study's been, the results are acceptable. I don't know how typical it is to have public input on this, but on the, the design moving forward, I think that'd be really reasonable.
Dalton, this is not a typical city in my opinion, but because we're so small, and 73rd has been a problem with traffic for a long time, at least for the 5 years I've lived here. So I think it is important to get the resident input. I don't think it's that hard to do, and I don't think it'll delay things much, but I'm not opposed to receiving it and filing it.
What the motion is on the table is to receive and file it. And then we have the traffic study of which can be built upon going forward.
Dave, let me ask too, if I might, have we paid for the study, the traffic study already?
The traffic study is part of the 73rd Street redesign contract. And so I believe, Justin, you'll have to correct me on this, but I believe that the bills for that have been coming in, and it's all kind of lumped in one larger project.
Correct. You've paid for some of it as we go. And I just want to add to this. This is the study from data. Rob has gone through and done the data. He is signing this. If some resident comes out and says, yeah, I want a turn lane here, I'm probably not going to have Rob change it just because the resident wants to put a turn lane in one spot that has no like data proven. So this is really what this is a data driven thing. If somebody wants, if we have discussions about putting a turn lane at the school, great, we can add that. This is the data from our traffic study. All that other stuff can happen afterwards, talking to residents. We usually do that once we have some sort of a kind of a layout put together. That way they know what we have and they can actually visually see this. And if some people come up or you guys, we talk to the school and say, yeah, great idea, let's put a turn lane in there, maybe facilitate it a little bit better than that it does. The traffic study, the numbers we have are from peak hour, which is during school time. So it's just the traffic, the data shows it. It's just, I mean, I'm not wanting Rob to change it just because a resident comes and says, yeah, we want to add a left turn somewhere. So that's just kind of what the study is.
Justin, yep. I'm not disagreeing with the information that the traffic study did. The only question I asked previously was if this is not done for 5 years or 6 years, how valid that information would be. And he answered my question.
Sure.
So I have no objection to again, receiving and filing it. But as far as resident input, I think we should bring them along, our residents along, as we should in most things. And so it just doesn't pop up that here's a $10 million project or whatever it's going to be. So
I totally agree with that. What I'm saying is that nothing in this report is probably going to change from talking to residents, I guess. I just want to make that clear.
Well, you never know. I mean, I have an open mind, so, and I know you probably do too.
So would it be acceptable? Our newsletter for July has already gone out, so the next newsletter is going to go out. I'd like to get it next. I think that's where we have our biggest reach. So it'll go out the first Thursday of August. We can set some kind of a public open house for mid to late August, take public feedback from that, and then bring it to council early September. Justin, does that work for you guys from getting things preliminarily set up? Or
yeah, I mean, we can lay some stuff out.
Yeah, and then is that for the council, is that acceptable to you guys? Because we got to get the public input and all that. Does that work for the 4 of you that are on right now?
This is just a motion to receive the traffic study. It has nothing to do, going forward. So
I just want to clarify. So the only thing that we are agreeing to if we approve this is to say, yes, we've received this traffic study. We may not agree, disagree with it, whatever, but we're receiving the study and we are accepting that that's what it says. But we are not by any stretch of the imagination saying this is our design, this is what we're going to do. None of this is in stone. Is that correct? This is just, I am accepting that I have received this, and then I am accepting that, you know, it's basically just sitting out there. You know, this is what the data shows.
I think that the terminology used is very appropriate. We're receiving it. And doesn't say we're agreeing with it or anything, and it's being filed for whenever we can act on it.
Susan, you're correct.
Okay. So if we agree to this, all we're doing is taking it, we're receiving it. We're not saying we agree, disagree. We're not saying this is the design, this is not the design. We are still able to, like Mike Jones said, put in the turning lane or not put in the turning lane or whatever. This is just, we're receiving it and we're filing it and we're going to pull it out later when we need to. Correct?
That's correct.
Okay.
Motion on the table, roll call.
Hold on.
Nope.
I have a comment. Susan, I understand your consternation because I remember when I was on council, you know, pretty early on, and I was asked to receive and file a traffic study that was then used to change the parking on Del Metro and 64th. So I understand that you're concerned about that, because I am too. But if what we're being told is we're just taking this study and no further concrete design actions are going to be taken on that, if that's what the engineer and our public works director is telling me, then I think that's acceptable. Is that what I'm being told?
Yes.
Yes.
That's
Last thing
what
I
I
want to
heard.
do
It
is
will be in
start
the minutes,
designing this and
but-
it gets changed. So
It will be in the minutes that merely received because they've given it to us and it's going to be filed.
Perfect. That's my comment, Mayor Burgess. Thank you.
Thank you, Mike Jones, also, because that was my concern and I appreciate you bringing that up.
Okay, roll call.
Series,
Yes.
Joseph Jones,
Yes.
Lafredo,
Yes.
Mike Jones.
Yes.
Okay, folks. Next item on new business is consideration of pay request number 2 for the University Avenue project. Motion to approve.
So moved, Dave.
Second.
Any discussion?
I just ask, is it on schedule, Dalton? Dalton or Justin, is the project on schedule?
this is Justin. We're a little bit behind just because we ran into a fiber duct, kind of a long high V there that was shallow and in the way that had to be lowered by CenturyLink.
Okay.
So it's probably, that took, I want to say a good 2 weeks, 2 or 3 weeks there. So kind of help
That's
things
been
up a little bit.
That's been resolved with CenturyLink?
Correct. Yes.
Okay, okay, very good. Thank you.
On that conflict, just to be clear and fair, it's been resolved on that conflict. I don't want to, it's not totally rosy yet, but we're getting there.
Any further comments? Roll call.
Series,
Yes.
Joseph Jones,
Yes.
Lafredo,
Yes.
and Mike Jones.
Yes.
Next item is consideration of revisions to 28E for salt storage. There's part 1 and part 2. They're 2 different 28Es. Dalton, you want to kind of cover both of them so we can get them done?
Yeah, so the first 28E that you've got is amending the, so there's 2 28Es. One of them is to get Des Moines out of the Grimes salt storage facility. They have their own shed out on that property that is actually owned by the Metro Waste Authority. They're getting out of their lease with the Metro Waste Authority, and because all the other metro area communities were named in that 28E, we have to approve that. It's already been through the Metro Waste Authority and been approved by their board. The second 28E is getting the city of West Des Moines out of the shared building on the south side of that complex. The operation, administration, and financing of that whole situation will remain the same. Well, it's going to go to the city of Urbandale, but there's no substantial changes on our end. Our allotment of salt went up by almost 50%, so that's a good thing. But really, there's no, in my opinion, there's nothing to get anxious about on this one. But it's as I told Mrs. Series earlier, it's a weird agreement out there and a weird administration and I guess operation of it, but it works. So I guess we're grateful for that. Is there any specific questions on it that I could answer?
Thank you for answering my question with my confusion on the information that was kind of presented. So I appreciate you answering my questions, Dalton.
Absolutely. And you probably noticed that there's two memos for the 2080s that are exactly the same. And I must have, I think I submitted the wrong thing or something. There's supposed to be two different memos, but the second one is as I just described.
Motion to approve the revisions to 28E for the salt storage number 1, which removes Des Moines.
So moved.
Second.
Roll call.
Series,
Yes.
Joseph Jones,
Yes.
LaFredo,
Yes.
Mike Jones.
Yes.
Next one is consideration revisions to the 28E, which has to do with Urbandale taking over and West Des Moines removing. Motion to approve.
So moved.
Second.
Roll call.
Series,
Yes.
Joseph Jones,
Yes.
LaFredo,
Yes.
and Mike Jones.
Yes.
Next item is consideration of 28E agreement on crossing guards at 73rd and Hickman. Motion to approve.
So moved.
Second.
Any discussion?
Just like a little bit of talk from Chad, if possible. I assume Chad.
Yeah, this is similar, as you may recall, last year, I think. We entered into an agreement with West Des Moines Community Schools to contract the crossing guard in front of Clive Learning Academy with all city management. That contract allows us to kind of get out of managing the crossing guards. It allows for extra crossing guards if someone were to call in sick, whereas in the past, if someone called in sick, we didn't have a backup, so that position wouldn't be filled. And all city management takes care of all of the HR issues behind it, the training issues, and it's just an all-around good deal. Des Moines uses them, and West Des Moines uses them. There was discussion at that time about Urbandale jumping on with that, and they did not do it then, but they're now migrating to having all city management services cover their crossing guards as well. And so we have one position at 73rd and Hickman that we fund at a 25% rate. 25% is ours, 25% is Urbandale's, and 50% is West Des Moines Community Schools. The split will not change at all. The cost may go up a little bit just simply based on the rate per hour that all city management services has quoted. I think I budgeted $2,000 in FY21 for that position, and the 2080 has a cap of I think 2,700. So it's not a significant number, but I think most of the agencies in the metro are trying to get away from the management aspect of the crossing guard program, and all city management services expertise is in that realm. And so it makes sense for everybody involved.
Chad, was there, this will be the first time there was a crossing guard there?
No, we've had one there. We just paid our 25% to the city of Urbandale.
Okay, so that's it. We've had them in the past right there.
Yeah, it doesn't change anything operationally for us at all.
Thank you.
Any further discussion? Roll call.
Skiris,
Yes.
Joseph Jones,
Yes.
Lafredo,
Yes.
Mike Jones.
Yes.
Next item is consideration resolution 2020-91, approving community center individual refund requests. Motion to
Move.
approve.
Move to approve.
Second.
Any discussion?
So is this coming about because some of them are, because we said that we allowed renters scheduled between June 15th and July 15th to voluntarily cancel their events and receive a full refund. And some of these are like July 18th, July 26th. We have some for 3 different dates. Is this why it's coming forth to us?
This is Whitney, and that's correct. At the June 1st meeting, it was decided to just hear them on an individual case moving forward, as opposed to having a set number of dates where they could receive a refund.
Okay.
Any further questions? Comments?
Just a question for Whitney. Have we had anyone use the facilities yet since we've opened them back up? How do our reservations look for the next few months?
Our reservations are very full. We are booked almost every single weekend except for these first 2 listed in the resolution, the 18th and July 26th. People are constantly asking what our policies are and booking dates. We're booking into 2021 and even 2022 as well.
Thank you.
Good. Any further discussion? Roll call.
Skiris,
Yes.
Joseph Jones,
Yes.
Lafredo,
Yes.
Mike Jones.
Yes.
Any reports from council? Susan?
Just want to say thank you to Whitney for sending out emails the day of our meetings with all the meetings that we've had so that it's easier for us to kind of figure out where we have to be, what times we have to be there. And it's a lot easier than trying to go through all of the emails that we receive to find out that information. Also, special thanks to the city staff as they worked through all the punches that COVID has thrown at them. The social media posts have gotten info out to our residents in a timely manner. And so I've heard lots of good things about the Facebook messaging, and it seems to really be effective. Social media also, but more Facebook. As far as economic development, we met last Tuesday about the small business grants through the city. And we also discussed the fireworks shop at 73rd and Hickman. I've asked several times about where we are with the builder and his developing. So hopefully we'll be able to hear more about this site and when a building might be built. That's all.
Joseph?
DART this week, and we have no MPO meeting in the month of July.
Okay. Mr. Lafredo?
Pass.
Mike?
Yes, Susan, thank you for inquiring about the massive tent that I was under the impression there would be a solid structure there built at some point. I emailed Mark and Chad earlier today about questions about fireworks complaints. I've also emailed our legislator about seeing about what actions we can take because I believe, in my opinion, states or cities and localities should have the ability to determine whether or not they should sell fireworks in their jurisdiction, and the state of Iowa apparently disagrees. So I would like us to work to try to change that, but that's a discussion for down the line.
Mark? You got any comments?
You're talking to me?
Yes.
Oh, sorry. Okay. Yes, I missed that. You may recall that several months ago, there were 3 construction projects from the last several years that had not been closed out. One of my goals while I've been here is to get all these closed. Two have been, and Dalton and Justin are working to get the last one closed. It's been kind of a struggle to get the contractor to agree to a meeting. I know Justin's made multiple attempts and had thought he had a commitment, and then that didn't happen. So still trying to get that last one completed. Lauren Campbell will be conducting the community tour for the city administrator candidates on Saturday. And so far, we have 6 applications for the Small Business Recovery Grant Program that will be funded by the city. The submittal deadline is next Monday.
Okay.
That's it.
With that, I think we're probably about ready to go into closed session. Pursuant to Iowa Code 21.5 to discuss strategy with counsel on matters that are presently in litigation, where litigation is imminent, and disclosure would prejudice or disadvantages. Motion to go into closed session.
So moved.
Second.
Roll call.
Okay, Skeeries,
Yes.
Joseph Jones,
Yes.
Mike Jones, or Mike Lafredo,
Yes.
and Mike Jones.
Yes.